All right, so we're talking about MCP. Just to demystify it a little bit, I've seen some of the videos out there for intro to MCP, and it does the normal multiplication or addition functions for the that are in the tutorial. And I want to go a little deeper and really explain like what it is, how it works from a high level, a little deeper than that, and do something that really would make sense, right? So I'm going to connect Claude Desktop to it. I'm going to query data from DuckDB, all the things that would make it like an actual thing to be functional. So let's start off with MCP itself. Okay, so I'm going to do it from the perspective of not using the package or library at first. So what we do to communicate with MCP is just a protocol, right? Think kind of like TCP, think kind of like API, REST. I know REST isn't a protocol, but just think kind of those paradigms, right? So you have a server and something connects to it. This is a little different because you're not running the server yourself. You have the code, and the code takes something from stdin and pushes back to stdout. If you're not familiar with that, think about the terminal. Terminal, right, is stdout normally, and command line arguments are stdin. So basically what happens is the LLM calls your code and passes values in from the command line through standard in, and then you get a response back on standard out. And it's nothing magic here. Like the code, think about your code. It's your code. Think about what you want to do with it. Let's say I'm doing data engineering, and let's say I have a database. Okay, like I stood up here DuckDB. Well, yeah, let's have Postgres or whatever you want to have stood up, and you need to let an LLM access it. Well, all you have to do is write some functions against it that do things, and expose those functions to the LLM. Kind of like the paradigm of the REST API. Think about Fast API. All you do is write handlers, and you expose those through routes. And that's kind of what we're doing here. Not really, but kind of. That's a good close analogy. And I talked about TCP earlier because it's a protocol. Like there's a little handshake kind of thing that establishes, and it sends, I say it, Claude or Copilot or whoever sends initialization to get some information back, and then asks if the tools exist, what tools exist, how do I call the tools, and then that comes back and it can use the tools and do the thing. So let me talk about my experimental setup. My experimental setup here is with DuckDB. I just made 3 tables: customers, products, and invoices, and I seeded them trivially. So customers, 3 customers, 4 products, and some invoices that map a customer to a product and how many they purchased, kind of thing. So I can ask some questions once we get this running of Claude and say, hey, in my database that I have locally here on my desktop, tell me about customers. How many things did they buy? All this stuff. Okay, so that's the experimental setup. I have this data. I'm using UV, so I do have MCP here because I'm going to show you what the library gives us versus just kind of rolling it myself, but we're going to start with rolling it myself. So I have an array of tools. My array of tools consists of 2 things. One, a query, so you can query the database and I can ask questions of it. And since it's just a local DuckDB, I went ahead and put like insert, update, and delete, so we can do full CRUD here. I want to see the LLM do all the things, right? I want them to interact with the database, give me back data, give me back some query results, maybe even some aggregations. We're going to see what happens. We're going to see how crazy I get with it. But you have a required parameter here, and that's just the string of SQL. So a couple quick things. JSON-RPC, right? The remote procedure RPC, just like gRPC or any of those that you would normally use, is the format we're using here. So the JSON-RPC 2.0, I'm using the protocol version 6.18.2025. I had to change that. I was using an older protocol earlier and it didn't work with Claude. So you have to really be specific on your protocol version when you're working with the LLMs, because they may not be outputting the protocol that you're expecting. The other thing here is tools is empty. Basically what you're saying for capabilities is I have tools, ask me what they are. And that comes down here where they call tools list and same JSON-RPC, and they get the tools back. And this is the array of tools that I have. And then they can call the tools, give the name and the arguments, and they pass it in. And just a simple if statements and if else here. If it's query database, then I pass it over. If it's write database, then I pass it over, right? And the backing this is simple. It's just a run query and run write. So again, if you were creating your own software, your own programs, you would create some functions or create some methods on a class that do something. And then your software works because it works, not because it's a special server that an LLM can talk to. The connection is just the protocol that the LLM passes into your command line when it runs your software to call those functions and get results back. There's nothing magic here, nothing special. It's just a way to connect your LLMs to your actual thing. So my actual thing is selecting from DuckDB and inserting to DuckDB. So we're going to do some testing of this. Again, you don't have to spin it up. It doesn't run per se, right? It allows you to pass in data. And I'm going to I'll do an echo here real quick and pipe it into the server and get results before I show you connecting to Claude real fast. So let me grab and copy paste something real quick and we can watch it actually function. All right, so I'm gonna, let's not do, we don't have to do all that at once. We'll all run at once? No, okay, good. Oh good, no module found DuckDB. Let me make sure I have my UV sync going on here before I go any further. So UV sync, UV's already synced, good. And I'm going to CD into my actual tutorial here so I can run these echoes. Cool. Oh, I was already there. Huh. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, I'm going to list the tools. So basically I'm just echoing this JSON-RPC, and I ran initialize real quick to make sure it was working. So JSON-RPC listing tools, and I'm going to run this, and it gives me back my tools here. And you see it says server starting, got the request, runs this, and then server closes. So another thing it is, it's really efficient. You're not sitting here with a server running 24/7. It's running when it hits it. So if you're in Docker or even a Lambda or something that it can hit, you know, you don't have to really worry about it constantly running. But there would be some cold start if you did that way. So you just have to be careful about that. Let's pass a query. So I'm passing a query in now. I expect to get data back, and I do. So my query is just select star from some customers. Let me move it from behind my video here. Basically, I am just selecting star from customers. You saw earlier, I only have a few of those. I didn't put a whole lot of customers in the database, so it returned back the customers that I have. Okay, so we know the server's working. I've tested it with the command line. It spins up, it gives my results, and it goes down. Now, how does that help me, right? How do I actually implement this? Well, the first thing is I need to get the config from Claude. So on your desktop, I can tell you where it is on Mac. Windows is probably close to the same place. On your desktop, you'll have a hidden folder called library on a Mac. Command-Shift period opens up your hidden folders, and you're able to see library application support Claude, and inside of Claude, Claude Desktop config.json. And you care about this top JSON object. This is what you're adding. Okay, so I'm using UV. That's what I use for my Python. So my command here is just, it's using UV with it. And then there's the args where my code is, and we're doing Python. So it just basically needs to know, how do I get to this DuckDB server? Okay, and that's the crux of it. Once you do this, you save this and you restart Claude. Now, once you restart Claude, and I'll show you where I tested, I'll bring Claude over. Once you restart Claude, here's my handy dandy Claude. You'll see down here in connectors, there's my DuckDB connector. That's how you know it worked. If it pulls up here, then it made the connection. And like I said, that's not running. It just has the connection to it. So let's ask what it can do. What can you do with the DuckDB connector? So let's see what it tells me, because it says it's connected. My server exposes two tools, query and write. So basically full read-write access to whatever's in your DuckDB. When we explore the tables and data you have there. Yes. Can you insert a few rows into customers and into and mimic the referential integrity to products and invoices so that your new customers have invoices and products on their invoice. Let's see if it works. Okay, looks at this table and schemas. And remember, my thing is set up for it to only pass SQL in. So it has to pass actual SQL, not anything else, not any other way. So it's now looking at the right IDs. It's going to look at the data. Again, my data is light. If my data was too heavy, it would get bogged down, and you'd see it compacting the conversation. Cool. I'll add two new customers. Our IDs 4 and 5. This is the actual call it's making to my MCP server here. So this is what it's sending. I'm going to allow it. Okay. And it's writing the database, and it verifies with a join. It's querying the database to make sure they fit together. All good. All linked up. Here's what was added. Yes, if you had this data and you were a data analyst for store, what queries would make sense for you to write, and what are the results of running against my fake database? All right, so it's saying that revenue by customer would be good. Carol Chen is a top spender at 864. Bob Martinez only placed one order, a retention risk, so it's giving us sentiment analysis. Best-selling products. Monitors dominate revenue. Even though a mouse moves more units, classic high ticket versus high volume. Average order value per customer. Product frequency. Store level summary. How are we doing snapshot? And here's the key takeaways. Carol Chen is the VIP, highest spend, highest AOV. She buys monitors in bulk. She's retention priority. So you could do some analysis here on the users, maybe things like churn, lapsed user, or if you have people like Carol who's spending a lot there, maybe you want to incentivize her to stay with you. Or Bob, you would give maybe a special discount since he's at risk. But this is a good summary of the revenue. That's a good one snapshot for whoever's making decisions and this is something that would bring value and would move the actionable kind of data here. So good. So with real data, you'd also layer in time series, of course, but on a 5 customer data set, these are the queries with scale to a real store. So we did a little bit here, a little more than just the hello world of MCP, and we did it quickly. I spun up a DuckDB. I created my own MCP server on top of 2 functions that I created to access the database. I connected Claude Desktop to it and asked questions about my data, had him add some data to the database and get some insight to what that data looks like. So that's just one idea of how to use this and how it's practical. And if you're making things today and you're building products, add MCP support, because that's going to be the integrator of the future. And the earlier you get comfortable with it, the earlier other people can use your tools through their LLMs as we get comfortable with it and as the technology comes into its own. So thank you so much for my quick kind of deeper dive into it. Before I go, I just want to show you that server.py one good time, and that's everything that I wrote from scratch using the FastMCP. You'll notice that I've used a decorator annotation here, MCP tool, on top of query database. Query database just runs my query behind the scenes. So think about this as kind of like the route and the handler if you're used to using handler patterns. So this would be the handler behind the route, and so would this. And those are just my 2 functions that exist. And so this is just a wrapper kind of on top of those quickly. And this is the write it from scratch kind of way to just implement the protocol. And if you look, though, this is only 100 lines of code. Like even just implementing the protocol directly isn't a lot of code, isn't a lot of work. But the package definitely does make it a lot better. So that's all I have. My time is running out. Like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.